queens and royal gents and popes and priests and presidents, gurus and shamanic healers, pharmacological dealers, zealots, righteous in reverse, and worshippers of Mother Earth, mantra chanting, meditating.
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio with Tom and Ramon. And wow, I'll tell you what, Ramon, this has been, oh man, the last couple of months has been absolutely amazing. And you know, I'm just I keep digging into my own consciousness, and I don't know, I'm finding some things that are pretty remarkable just within myself. And then I'm looking out with these things that I'm finding. I'm looking out in the world and seeing things with a completely different lens on now. And I don't know, it's pretty remarkable stuff. And starting to be able to see the connections, kind of hard to describe, I guess, the connections at such a subtle level that at first glance you definitely don't see them, but they're always there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting primed to be one of the monkeys. on the next step, you know.
Yeah.
So what you been up to in Japan the last week, Ramon?
You know, working, teaching the English. But I kind of feel like for me personally, I've kind of hit a plateau, which in one part is very frustrating and another part is exciting, because usually you hit the plateau before you move on up to the next level. So in that way it's exciting, but in the other way it's kind of frustrating, because it's that time period which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. During your meditations, you almost feel like a beginner, like it's your first time meditating.
Exactly.
And you're like, this stuff doesn't work, kind of attitude you feel. So I'm kind of there, so, you know, trying to
I think don't we experience that with every new thing that we understand, though?
Yeah, but that's what's the amazing thing about meditation, because I think it's different than other things. Like, for example, in my writing, I can see how I'm getting better and getting maybe a little faster, and it's easier for me to get into that creative thing. But with meditation, is always like this: you hit this plateau, then you have this experience, or you feel different, and then you hit this plateau again, and then it's like walking several blocks or miles, then going up the hill, then walking several blocks or miles again, and going up the hill. But anyway, enough about me. I have this thing I put on Facebook. Check this out, Tom. So this boy, he was considered by his teachers in elementary school to be too slow, so they put him in special ed classes, and the parents were really frustrated because the kid wasn't learning anything. And it turns out to be that this kid is a genius. The doctors and the teachers told him that it would be hard for him to learn anything, and he doesn't really, he doesn't know how to fit in. But it turns out this kid knows how to look at the world and see it mathematically. And he's at this point where he's trying to mathematically get into what Einstein was talking about and fix his problems.
Really?
Yeah, he was explaining how when he was young, he would see the shadow of something, and then see his shadow, see the light the way it reflected, and in his mind he was like figuring out how was that working out, and people thought he was just stuck, when really he wasn't doing anything. So he has this thing on TED Talk where and I'll post that up on the website before this airs, but where he just is breaking down how whenever these genius guys did these amazing things like Einstein and Newton, that they no longer were in school. So for example, Einstein couldn't be in school because of the whole Nazi thing. So he was working at the patent office. And Newton, because of the plague, the school had closed down. So during that time, they stopped learning and started thinking. And this is in the words of the boy. You know, he laughs a lot and moves around a lot, but when you hear him talk, you hear an adult. And again, I'm gonna get you guys tired of hearing this.
Hey, I found one the other day, a 9-year-old kid that was explaining the meaning of life on YouTube.
Yeah. See, that's my point. That's my point right there. This generation between, and I'm saying only 5. I'm sure it goes beyond that, but between 5 and 20 are just blowing my mind with the kind of stuff, because I'm sure 1 or 2 people in our generation, you know, did amazing thing when they were younger, but it just seems like there's a whole dam full.
There is.
And stop putting tape on the dam.
There definitely is, Ramon. Most.
Yeah. So I'm. Anything else, Tom? Because I'm really excited to talk to our guest.
No, I just urge you guys. Actually, you know, a couple of years before that generation, check out. We've got a video on our main page. It's been there for a while, but I figure I'd remind you guys. It's called Luminous Flicker. It's a poem that actually, this is my nephew, and
oh yeah,
there's a good example of, you know, what's coming in these next generations. So I'd urge you guys to take a look at that. It's some pretty amazing stuff. He's got 3 or 4 of these out there now, and if you can follow the YouTube stuff to his channel and listen to some of his what would that be called? Limerick, right?
I'm so out of touch with that, but
anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, some pretty amazing stuff. Some pretty enlightened people popping up on this planet, and man, I am so ready for this. I mean, good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Besides that, we're ready to go. Shall we get chatting with our guest?
Yeah, before he falls asleep.
Yeah, okay. We've got Ronald Holt with us. Ronald began his spiritual training as a teenager in Northern California when he devoted himself to a committed practice of Wing Chun Kung Fu. This gave him the foundation of a steady mind, focused thought, and the ability to sense subtle flows of energy. In the late 1970s, as a young man in his early 20s, he began his practice of meditation, even through his tour of duty on an aircraft carrier in the U.S. Navy. Once honorably discharged, he moved to New Mexico and began a serious study of esoteric spirituality, studying under a teacher and channel outside of Albuquerque. Throughout his life, he has always received inspiration and information, but when he was younger, he didn't know how to use it. During the 1980s, he began to receive information regarding the ancient science of sacred geometry, most especially utilizing the wisdom of platonic solid called the octahedron. His explorations into sacred geometry continued, and in the early 1990s, he began teaching workshops based on sacred geometry and meditation. He also traveled extensively to sacred sites in the American Southwest and Hawaii, and let nature and his inner inspirations teach him what he needed to know for the future. He's dipped his fingers into quite a few different things, some marine and field archaeology, and he's written some pretty amazing papers on the website of solisschool.org. That is SOLISCHOOL.org. And we'd like to give you a big warm 100th monkey welcome, Ronald Holt.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for inviting me onto this show.
Yeah, so I think we want to probably start I guess we'll start with the Wing Chun, or your background.
In martial arts, yes. Well, yeah.
What is Wing Chun for those who are not familiar?
Wing Chun is a form of martial arts started by actually a priestess, and she couldn't take the rigorous conventional styles of Choi Li Fut and some of the more animal styles of Kung Fu in the monastery. And so her thinking process was that if these martial arts were modeled after the animals, well, man is a different type of being and with higher capacities, and so there should be a style that's designed strictly along those avenues. And so this nun, she developed the style, a very close-in style that could combat the more long-range styles of Kung Fu. And it became very successful, very powerful, and one of the most, familiar public persons to use this style was Bruce Lee, who studied under Yip Man and became quite adept in his abilities. So I studied this when I was younger because I got into martial arts. One of my older brother's friends down the road just happened to teach a lot, and I watched him on a couple of occasions, and the Bruce Lee movies were just coming out, so I begged him to teach me, and he finally did. And from that moment on, I just started working out so much with it that I found myself doing almost like 6 or 8 hours a day doing martial arts and gymnastics. And I stayed with that for quite a while, and a lot of unusual things started happening, which was kind of taking me beyond the norms of normal human experiences, and so that led into my spiritual background.
So was it your recognition of things that are outside the quote unquote norm happening that started you looking towards the spiritual side of things?
Yes, because I wanted answers to some of these unusual things that were taking place. And there was, back in the late 70s and early 80s, there was nothing, really. There was very, very little. I think Jonathan Livingston Seagull was out at that time, and Tibetan Book of the Dead. Those were some things that you could get spiritually. Manly P. Hall were some rare books you can get. So I sought out to find answers to these things because they were quite unusual. And that's what got me started into the spiritual avenue, although the meditations that we were doing and concentration exercises that we were doing for martial arts really helped me move the physical body to degrees I never thought were possible. And it was quite astounding in certain circumstances, where the rare few circumstances where I had to demonstrate or demonstrate my skill involuntarily.
Right.
Just phenomenal things would happen, and I wanted to know what exactly is happening in those circumstances that allowed you to slow time down and move in that interspace between time with such knowingness of what to do. So that began that spiritual quest, and I had to eventually learn to support myself, so I had to leave the house, and I wanted to go out and see the world, and I didn't have the finances to do that, so I thought, I'll just join the Navy, which my gymnastics coach, I started doing some gymnastics at the college nearby, Sonoma State College, and Gary Vanderhoff was the gymnastics coach at Sonoma State College, and I was still in high school, and I guess he really saw that deep down pure desire that was really motivating me at that time, and he took compassion on it, and he invited me to work out with the college gymnasts, and so I did, and he wound up when he heard I was going into the Navy, He offered me a complete scholarship, a gymnastics scholarship at Sonoma State College, which I turned him down.
Wow.
And Gary Vanderhoff was 1968's Olympics alternate, and he was mainly his chief interest was on the rings, and he was top 10 in the world on rings in gymnastics. So
I recognize the name. But
oh, you do?
Wow. Yeah. Actually, I used to follow most of the Olympic sports pretty closely when I was in my 20s. So.
Wow. I haven't heard too many people recognize that name. But anyway, I'm so happy because Gary was a wonderful guy, and so were the students at that time. That just made me feel at home and helped teach a lot of gymnastics. But like I said, it didn't... gymnastics was great. I wanted to be able to move my body in unconventional ways and in ways that seemed to free you. So I couldn't, wrestling didn't seem to do that for me, but gymnastics and martial arts, they seemed to be the perfect combination. And so that's what I really got into. And I had a friend at that time. His name was Chris Dennison, and the guy was he was kind of a phenom with his ability to see auras, and we hated playing hide and seek with him because Chris, he could see where you were hiding.
Yeah.
So it was Chris who, as he saw I was getting interested in more of the, my spiritual pursuit, he recommended Jonathan Livingston Seagull and a couple of other things, and eventually I left to go into the Navy. And when I was in the Navy, I was reading so much, and I had one good friend who I could on the cruise I took in 1980, in 1979 and 1980. We made a Westpac cruise, and there was a buddy of mine who worked in the same department. His name was Don Figgins, and he and I used to do a lot of spiritual searches and stuff. So we would go out on the sponsons of the aircraft carrier at night. And sponsons are kind of like, for lack of a better term, they're kind of like little shelves on the side of the ship that have, it's kind of like little porches, and there's doorways to get to those little porches. So we would go out there and close the hatch and do meditation, where we would open up to the sky. And when we would go into meditation deeply enough, you could hear the music of the spheres.
Wow.
And when we, and that was our way of fulfilling ourselves rather than having to, resort to any chemical or whatever. We would go out and do these meditation and, open your heart and mind up so much that you can hear the music of the spheres. And when you're at that level, as you know from meditation, you get to that point and you're like so rejuvenated and so fulfilled. So we would just stay in that. Well, one night we were doing that, and we watched as this UFO cut across the sky, completely across the sky in our field of vision, dip down towards the ocean, make a circle, and come right back up into the sky and leave. And we sat in silence for about 10 minutes, and finally I said, "Hey, Don, about 10 minutes ago, did you see something weird in the sky?" He said, "Yeah, but I wasn't going to say a damn thing about it." That kind of opened up a new window, about the ET thing. And later on in life, as you know, I'm married to somebody that works a lot with that topic. So anyway, that's how kind of things began in that area.
I'm curious to know, not to jump ahead, but is that anybody your wife knows?
Dawn Figgins? No.
No, I'm talking about the UFO.
Oh, I relate the story to her, but she didn't have any hits on who exactly it was at that time.
Okay. I thought that might have been somebody checking you. I was like, oh yeah, there goes the future. Because I've heard stories like that, where either the future self of someone would come visit their future spouse, or or the certain aliens would come by and visit, and there'll be like a hit or something. But
well, yeah, I believe in that a lot. When I was younger, I was about 11 years old, and my father got stationed to Athens, Greece. And so we lived outside of Hellenikon, which was the base at the time, in Athens, and we lived on the slopes. And my father, he died of a heart attack during a scuba diving venture, and so we had to go back to where we lived in California, to our house, just in Rohnert Park area. And when we got back to our house, my older brother and I had to share a bedroom, and so his bed was against one wall, my bed was against the other wall, and I happened to be on the wall that the door was on. The door was probably about 6 feet from the foot of my bed, so my feet faced away from the door, and my brother was on my right-hand side from that. And one night when, after we had moved back into the house and Dad had already departed, one night I woke up around 12 o'clock at night, and my knees, I found that my knees were up, feet on the bed, knees were up, and above the knees was this unusual thing I had never seen before. There was this white, oval, pearlescent, self-luminous, about 3 foot tall, white orb, pearlescent white orb over my knees. And I just laid there aghast and trying to figure out, what the heck is this? And I noticed retrospectively that it was very, very benign and peaceful, yet I had a bunch of emotions running into me, because this was outside of my paradigm. What the heck?
Right.
So I thought, you know what? I should wake up my brother. Maybe he knows. And so I turned, to wake up my brother, and then this flash hit me that, oh yeah, I can see what's going to happen. I wake up my brother, this thing disappears, my brother never lets me live it down.
Right.
Hook him up. So forget that. All right, so I forgot it, and it was just hovering there. So I just watched it for a while in just total amazement. And then I remember to this day stating to this thing, I'm not ready yet. And all you're doing to me right now is scaring me. Although I wasn't scared, I just didn't know what to say or what to do.
Right.
And so rather than stay in the uncomfortableness of that quandary, not knowing what to say or what to do, hi, my name is Ron. How are you? Where are you from?
What's your job?
What's happening? None of those things came up to say. I just ran out of, patience for living in my own uncomfortableness about what to say and what to do. So when I said that, then it seemed like it rotated softly, almost like it was waving. Then it went to the left where the wall is. It moved to the left where the wall is, and the wall was no longer the wall, but the infinite night sky. So I'm going, how the heck, what the heck is going on here? And then it moved out into that space, but then it would stop at different points and do that circular movement with itself, almost like it was taking its gentle rays and rotating them one way, then rotating it the other way. So it was kind of a wave-like action, and then it would go off further and disappear. I mean, it finally, after doing that several times, it finally disappeared. And that was one of those things that helped, that was one of the big questions I need answered, because reality obviously isn't reality.
Right. There's definitely more going on here.
If the wall can disappear just like that, and beings can come that are self-luminous, what is going on?
I know that speechless feeling quite well.
And that I'm not crazy.
So when I shared that with Lisa, and well, actually even before Lisa, I've shared that at different times to different people I thought were much more experienced and had more understanding and knowledge of that spiritual realm, if we want to just divvy it all into that kind of corner. And they mentioned something along the lines that you were first talking about, and that was that this is a part of you that wanted to come and speak with you and let you know that the way things are programmed, or the way things look on this planet, and you are led to believe, is not what is really out there. And more specifically, that's not really who and what you are. But when I brought it to Lisa, she said, "Oh yeah, that's an Arcturan being." So she knew right offhand who it was and what it was. And I feel very close. I felt a lot of closeness with that explanation, that it was an aspect of the Arcturan side,
right,
of myself. So even when Lisa teaches a lot about her contact, she prefaces at the very beginning, she prefaces about how her teacher, who studied this science of channeling at the university, and they came up with the conclusion that as you continue to open yourself to these higher aspects, and they viewed higher brain waves activity as one moves into that channel modality. Well, the more you move into those, I would call those more integrated energy brainwave spectrums. So as you move more into those, you start sending signals out that you're ready to integrate even more brainwave frequencies, and over time, it's almost like we're a crystal. If you take the example of a salt crystal and you try to grow a salt crystal, well, if you try to expedite the process by, blowing on it or somehow speeding up the evaporation process, you get tiny little crystals. But if you are allowing it to gradually grow, and you're taking your time on the growth, the evaporation process, then what you turn out with is a great giant crystal. And that's kind of like us. And every time we work in a conscious method with bringing in these integrative frequencies to ourselves, and we know that the entire universe is made up of frequencies, and so the more integrated that we can maintain our center, the more we attract all the frequencies to start coming back into their holistic pattern, and we start seeing and feeling our connection with all things. And so this draws in then the higher aspect of ourselves, the more conscious levels of ourselves, because it seems like there are higher levels of our higher self, if you will, that which has a greater vantage and embrace of more of the integrativeness of life. As we move into higher aspects of that, then one higher self starts to merge with the current self, and so on, because it's all integrated. At one point, they're all integrated as one holistic unit, but how much distraction we cling to helps keeps us separated and experiencing more of the separation dynamic. So I would very much agree with what you said about that these beings, these other ET beings, it goes along with saying they come back and they visit us because they really are us. There's no separation.
I absolutely love that, the salt crystal metaphor there. That is so poignant.
Yeah, that's really on point.
And you know what? I think we have. Oh man, that is just such an excellent overlay of what we're really witnessing out there right now. I mean, there's a lot of people that are very impatient with the process, and it's kind of, I kind of see that they kind of shatter themselves off in different directions, and yeah, spiky. They're spiky. You know? I just love that metaphor. So.
Well, I think there's a lot to just what you brought up there, the spikiness and the wanting to attempt to do something to bring all these components together. Now, when we look at some of the ancient teachings and the higher principles in some of these ancient teachings, specifically, you can find this in the Yoga Sutras, how we were created at the onset perfectly. And so it's stated in there that you can't add to or take away from the perfection that you already are.
Right.
However, when we take that statement and then we look at the outer world, and our eyes can help but see the imperfection of things that are going on. And so, and when we also look at ourselves in reaction to the dualities of life that are going on, we start reacting. And reacting is kind of more of an unconscious response than response is. Response is coming from a more conscious level. So we can't help but feel, when we look at ourselves and the responses and reactions we have to the dualities of life that come up, and it makes us feel one way or the other, we can't help but feel that I need to do something.
Right.
I need to physically or actively engage in something in order to, change. But if we look back at some of these higher principles, they tell us that the thing we can do is the thing we're most distracted by, and that's that we cannot see clearly that which causes us the greatest challenge, the greatest strife, grief, anxiety, and so on. And so it's not by doing, it's by stilling and then seeing clearly. And that gets into an entire deep process that we have to look at ourselves and our responses to the external and the responses we have to our relationships and so on, the conflicts that arise from that. Because if we are already perfect, boy, that leaves a whole lot of stress off our shoulders. We're already perfect, but we're not seeing clearly. Okay, well, that's 90% of the battle is in that dichotomy there. So if we were to look at ourselves and our responses to what's happening in the outer world, what's happening in relationships, what's happening as we face certain things, then we can start to see the polarities inside of the changing duality, the dualistic conditions of life. And from there, we can start seeing how we get tangled up by our unconscious reactions and our unconscious belief systems about what's going on. And so this is the nature of what I feel is trending right now in the spiritual community. Spiritual communities are now starting to see that, the repeating problems that come in their lives, that comes in our lives. You've spent X amount of time trying to heal this issue, that issue, or whatever, yet it crops back up in one form or another. You can only get a temporary relief from it, but yet when the duality of life changes, it reappears. And so if we take the time then to look at these changing dualistic tides and conditions of life and where we polarize them, then we can start taking the mental, emotional, and psychological charge that's so active inside of our being, and they create the kind of mental, emotional, or psychological balloons of stresses that we have, and we wind up managing these balloons and trying to keep them down, trying to keep them from coming up and contracting us. So I'm kind of going off a little bit.
Oh, no, this is good stuff. Keep going. I'm loving it.
Yeah.
This is what I see is happening out there in the world, and until we take time to look at this stuff clearly. Remember, we're already perfect. 90% of the battle's over, so it all lies in what we're seeing and how to see it clearly. And the unfortunate thing is, being humanist, being such engulfed in such human natures and the human condition, we tend to only begin to focus on what matters most when the level of pain and suffering nearly equals the resistance that we have to opening our eyes and seeing clearly. Then we have the opportunity to awaken. So awakening and liberation and illumination are much different than what is often proposed out there. Awakening, liberation, and such comes from just seeing these things clearly and being willing to stand instead of run away from these pressures that we have internally that come up as the kaleidoscope of reality changes in its dualistic nature from positives to negatives, and then we polarize them and create more charges on them until we're ready to just stop. When you feel the pain, that is kind of like the red flag. Hey, something's out of whack here. And when we take our meditative time to allow for one of these, let's just take one balloon. We take a balloon that's ripe. We know it's ripe because it's right there, ready to come out. But the thing is, with these emotional balloons, they always feel like they're immense. and overwhelming. And if I open it, oh my God, I'm surely going to die because what's inside of it is not very pretty. And it seems endless. Well, that's the take that they have. That's the illusion that they have. And so if we're willing to stand in the face of that dragon, when we open the balloon, the first stuff that comes out is not very pretty. However, they are the misconceived illusions of our own pain and suffering. So they come out as guilt, shame, blame, fear, grief, and so on. Well, if you're willing to stand and willing to feel it all, embrace it all, eventually that balloon of emotions and psychological stresses, eventually that relieves. And at the end, the core inside of there, as the balloon deflates, there's no more stimuli for polarization. So the boundary of a bubble, a water bubble, is only made by the surface tension. Well, for us, the surface tension that makes these emotional balloons or bubbles is the polarization, the belief system, and how we've been treated or victimized or whatever by this situation. When we can see it from a non-polarized state, which means we have to go up into our meditational state to the point where we're beyond judging, we're just in the observer, the neutral observer. We take no position, we just see clearly. So from inside the neutral observer, we can look at these issues, allow the charge to diminish, and then we see the core, and the core is something we've misinterpreted and blown up. And and every time that comes around in the cycles of duality in this world, because we have a repeating pattern of cycles in this dualistic reality, once it comes back up, we polarize it and we add more charges to it. So if we can see it clearly and how it was created, we can ask all these kinds of questions up inside of that neutral observer state where you're one and so centered. You can ask anything at that and receive from that the unity mind or the holistic mind, the holistic knowledge bank. And we can look at this issue from what it really is, how it was created, when it was created, why it was created. Those three questions then do something just so incredibly valuable to us. When we can see those three, then the false self, the mind or the ego, it seems to always, when we're feeling these balloons, it keeps us in this mental merry-go-round and emotional roller coaster. And the only way off, it seems, the only way to stop the mental merry-go-round and the emotional roller coaster is to see clearly. And when we can answer those three questions, it seems to stop that blender without surrender, right, and enable us to sit inside of ourselves, completely fulfilled, completely at home in the entire universe. The entire universe finds its datum point, its null point, its neutral point, and then we see clearly. And from that, then the polarized perspective. Polarized perspective seems to put us in this dynamic, this endless karmic wheel, where we keep repeating the pattern. Right. And we keep thinking from a polarized perspective, oh my God, I have to fight this negative with positives, or I have to deal with it in these types of polarized terms, when in reality, there's nothing you have to do but see clearly. And when you see clearly, then the polar opposites, because reality has so many conditions that have us either wanting to run away, and we call those negative, polarized negative conditions, or they have us wanting to hang on and cleave to the polarized positive condition. Well, in the polarized reality, it just keeps the wheel of karma going round and round and round. We can never get off until we find the neutral point, and the neutral point of polarities is seen where they merge. We can't see where they merge until we take the charges off of the beliefs, the feelings, and the judgments we place against ourselves, and we keep stabbing ourselves and wounding ourselves with these self-degrading belief systems and projections about ourselves that keep cropping up in other people. We keep blaming ourselves for the wrong things because we interpret it wrongly. So by ending the polarized perspective, the two poles come together and create an energy which I call the diamond, and the diamond light, that then infuses itself into the entire being, and it has radiance coming back out, because all things can come back into their proper alignment if we take the polarized charge of our own unconscious belief system and judgments. If we can take those off, then reality, the entire cosmos can come back home, back into ourselves.
Ronald, let me interrupt you 1 second there.
Sure.
Because you wrote an amazing article called the Heart Diamond Experience.
Right.
And I think that really will help explain what you're talking about if you went into that experience.
I'm not sure about the Heart Diamond article. I haven't read it for a long time.
Oh, the experience you had in what was it, Otemachi or
Imperial Gardens?
Yeah.
Oh, that one. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Do you want me to share the story of that, or what is it you're looking for specifically on that?
Yeah, share the story, and then we can go into that the meaning of that, because you started going into that by talking about the diamond.
Oh, okay. All right, fantastic. And let me lay down a little bit of background first. And that background has to do with Japan, which I love Japan because there's so many exceptional spiritual places and creations and experiences to be had in Japan. It has such a depth. The Shinto religion seems to be very grounded in almost every aspect of natural spirituality, from ley lines, grids, grid nodal points, to all the divas, elementals, elf, gnome, sylph, undines, fairies. They have it all. And it's so rich. It's so beautiful. Well, as a boy, I grew up from 4 years old till 8.5 years old in Japan. My dad was stationed in Tachikawa, and at that time, 1964 to 1968, we were 20 miles away from Tokyo, so we were in a very rural area, and it since has industrialization has covered all that area.
Yeah.
So, but in Japan, I started back in 1993 to come to Japan to start doing some spiritual work, and met some incredible people. Tatsuhiko Komore is one, and we have a very nice history together as sharing the spiritual realities. But I think it was 2004, something like that. No, I think it was 2004 that I became aware of some of the intricate grids and ley lines in Japan. And one individual, named as Ieyasu, he was Tokugawa, and he really enjoyed the working with the grids, and his priest, Tenkai, I believe, was very much involved with this. And so Ieyasu loved the Tokyo plains, and at that time the plains was marshes, and nobody wanted it, but Ieyasu, I guess, saw the potential of this, and he went to some of the most powerful grid lines along the backbone of the mountains of Japan, and then he angled those grids so that they purposely went into the Tokyo area. So it was him at Nikko who changed the direction, or at least diverted some of the grids to go into that area. And from that thinking of, if you add the life force and lay down the proper matrix, then people will, life force attracts life, so people would be influenced to come into that area. But also he did it at a very important part. He did it in the northeast direction. So it covered in feng shui the line of destruction. So he made sure that the line of destruction was influenced by the line of life, and so mitigated that destructive tendency. So anyway, this winds up in Otemachi, which is the the castle that he built in that area, and he created the imperial gardens there, and he had the ley lines reach a certain point in that imperial gardens, and from that point you could address all the ley lines throughout Japan. And there's a specific line that goes straight up to Mount Fuji, which is a very important energy distribution point for all of Japan. And so one day, I think it was last year, 2012, I had been going there, and I could always check the condition of the grids, condition of the ley lines and such, and I noticed that it had been diminishing in its energy and essence. And so I thought to myself, what the heck is going on here? You know, we've got to do something about this in order to increase the life force, increase the harmony, and so on. But you can't do any of this on the level of the human ego. You've got to go well beyond the ego when you're in the absolute nothingness. And from there, there's certain things that can be done, and that can add and assist in helping with the energetics of the grid line. And I learned this a long time ago because I've been doing a lot of grid work all over for a long time. Just kept it quiet to myself because not a lot of people can understand the depths of this stuff. So anyway, I was out there, and I came into Otemachi, and I went to this specific spot, and I engaged the energetics of the grid lines, and as I was moving consciously to all the grid points in Japan, it seemed to be like water drops coming together and forming a unified body. So suddenly all of Japan just felt like one fluid being up and in that elevated meditational state. And then I got the message to connect even more of the grid lines and be more conscious of it. And as I did, suddenly this this is what I saw, was this diamond came down, this enormous diamond came out of the sky and came down over Otemachi, but it completely engulfed the entire Tokyo area. And as it did that, this voice came out of nowhere, or everywhere, and it said, "Tokyo is spared." And I got the impression from that first I was questioning this, how can that be? And I got the impression that as you move up into these levels of consciousness, where you see beyond the polarized reality and the polarized dynamics, as you will see beyond those things, you already have experienced how you move into the diamond of consciousness. And that diamond has a unique light. It's all pervasive. It's like diamond clear. Now, this may mean nothing at first hand, but if you compare white light, and we've probably all have heard, white light is a combination of the 7 rays. And so white light, as I was being shown inside of the white light, is at such a degree, when you're engulfed in white light, it's hard to see beyond it. And that is because it's still polarized. And 12 rays of light create the golden light. And golden light, though it feels incredibly satisfying and fulfilling, more so than the white light, it too is hindered by the fact that it also is polarized and you can't see beyond it. However, if you keep amplifying the integration of these spectrums of light, you come to the diamond clear light. And in the diamond clear light, all things, just like a diamond, has been under the intense and radical pressure and heat that moves the atoms and electrons to such a degree where they cannot be moved in any greater integration than what they are, in any greater alignment than what they are. And when they're in their perfect alignment, the only thing you have left is absolute clear seeing. And so, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, because that sounds like something I heard before, the diamond body. So is that the same, or is it little?
I've shared this with other individuals. One is a master in Taoist philosophies and techniques and so on, tradition, I should say. And he told me that this is actually the Tibetans have this and the Buddhists have it, so and the Taoists have it too. This is much higher principles, but our natural state of being outside of polarity is this diamondness, this absolute clear seeing in all directions. And so many of the higher teachings in the world's philosophies are based on that which is after polarity, when they talk about the diamond heart and the diamond body. So getting back to the story then, when I was being shown this about the diamond over Tokyo, what was being relayed at that time was that the diamond consciousness and the diamond reality is a state that the invitation to it is extended to everyone. Everyone has the right. However, this diamond state acts on reality, and reality is very fluid in all actuality and is as dense and rigid as just your perception. And so it's very much like the Schrodinger's principle, that inside of the box, when no one has looked inside of the box, probability is left open. So everything remains possible. But as soon as you look inside of the box, Schrodinger's box, reality then takes off where the mind of the observer is. It starts to organize according to the observer. And so if we were to release our attraction and distraction to what is polarized, then we start to see clearly beyond the polarized dynamics through the white light and gold light, and we move to a point in probability and possibility where everything is free and open. And so if you are experiencing that, if you climb through, so to speak, if you climb past the polarizations in your consciousness and allow the diamond to arise, then you hold, especially at these points in the world, at these grid centers, you hold for a moment in time and you start infusing your great crystal of consciousness with how to orient into this non-polarized perspective, non-dynamic, non-dualistic. And so you open the door and you extend the, by you being there, and the invitation is again open to everyone. When you move up into that and you consciously embrace the world and all of its inhabitants and all of its compounds and the entire diversity of life, from animals to plants to sand to everything, molecules of air, when you invite it and touch it from that level, then you invite all of life into a new probability, possibility. In fact, you open the door and you hold the door open for something new to change. And so by doing this now here in Tokyo and sharing it and sharing the invitation, what is happening that you're seeing is the diamond consciousness descend down into Tokyo. And as Tokyo goes, so goes the world. This was shared with this, as Japan goes, so goes the world, was shared at a previous engagement sitting at that same spot the year before in Otemachi. Now I understand from a greater level how much we can influence by not doing, but just seeing ourselves clearly, doing our personal work, facing these emotional balloons that we have, mental and emotional and psychological balloons, so that we use them as the tools to get us into the diamond clarity. That's the crucible of our challenges, that forges the diamond into its optimal alignment so that it's just absolutely diamond clear. And when we take that and hold that in these power spots over the planet, then the invitation is resonating throughout the entire body of the planet. And if we look even further, this resonance, since all of creation is a hologram and a fractalized hologram, which means that no matter how far it separates, and like a disco ball with all the mirrors on it, if we were to look at all those mirrors on the disco ball as being one plane of reality that each of us occupy in our own perspective, we all come from the one, but we have all these different perspectives, and it simulates like there's billions of consciousnesses. Well, there kind of is, but there kind of isn't. That's the illusion. But stemming from the core of that disco ball is this diamond starburst of light, energizing each of these little facets of consciousness. And so when we hold the diamond possibility and this understanding of the holographic principle and the fractal principle, then we send this ray of light into the me in all things. The ray of light beyond polarity, beyond the duality. And we kind of act like a lighthouse inwardly, shining a way to ourselves to help the whole integrate non-destructively, harmoniously, peacefully, back into pure integration as best as we can in the moment. But like I was using that salt crystal, we can only take short moments at a time and infuse this into our crystal. But as we do, oh my God, now we're seeing from a non-linear perspective how any one of us changes the dynamic of the whole by seeing the whole more clearly, seeing ourselves more clearly outside of the polarized wheel of karma and more into the diamond clarity and diamond consciousness that touches all things from that inner starburst of radiant mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, what an experience.
Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour, and we're going to take our first break.
Okay.
It's amazing. So you got me like such in a relaxed kind of feeling, you know. So we want to thank everybody for joining us the first hour. If you're not a member, please join us in the second hour. Help support me and Tom so we can keep bringing out these great people like Ron. Also, if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can head over to our website, www.100thmonkeyradio.com. And Tom, this is episode 162? Yeah, 162. So that means you have 162 shows you can listen to.
There you go. At least.
So,
and that's we got another, I don't know how many over on Truth Frequency.
Oh yeah, another 30-something shows. So we have close to 200 shows. So if you're bored and have nothing to do yourself, you can head over to our website. And,
or if you really want to dig into some of this material and learn a little bit more about yourself, then dig into something.
Well, I meant if they're bored, they can listen to all shows at one shot.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that would definitely do me in.
That would be a record.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening, and like Ramon said, hit that join button and become a member. And I also urge you to check out Ron and Lesa's website at solischool.org. That's SOLISCHOOL.org. And they've got a lot of neat material over there and some wonderful articles and some good stuff. They're doing some good work there. So.
Yeah. Before we go, Ron, when are you gonna be here for Japan? For those living here in Japan and anywhere else in the U.S. or other countries?
Well, I just started the preparatory work to facing yourself and illuminating that true self inside. And that workshop is called Awakening the True Self, and that's going to be held November 2nd through November 6th this year, this coming up November, in Japan. That school, I did the preparatory one in May. I launched it in May in Italy, and it was really good, just very well received. And we take such a non-intimidating and very fun way of looking at these things, so everyone feels just completely invigorated and revitalized when go to the class. So that's going to be, and we don't have anything scheduled just yet, nothing written in stone, but November 2nd is the next time I'm putting on that Awakening the True Self. And then in the future, I'll be working, once there's enough people that have taken that course, I'm going to be doing one just on the diamond. so we can take this to a greater degree.
Wow. Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, guys. We'll see you after the break. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Global thinking gladiators, glowing tubes that mesmerize, nesting minds like butterflies, helpless flying in the night like moths misled into a light. Information overload, trust me, then do what you're told. Tell me who you think I am, give me meaning in a head. Just telling the truth. From this